With Hashem's loving grace, today's podcast is entitled The Dogs at Daybreak. There's a wonderfully moving story about Rebbetzin Rachel Sarna of saintly and blessed memory, who was the wife of Rabbi Chaim Sarna, the Rosh Yeshiva of Hebron Yeshiva in Geula in Jerusalem. But during the Holocaust, she succeeded several times in escaping the notorious Nazi deportations, and she was like a fugitive, constantly on the run and looking for a place to hide. Once she was running in an open field, dangerously exposed to any Nazi patrol that might pass by. She saw a path that led to a lone farmhouse, and she ran up to the front door. Panting and short of breath, she gasped, "Good people, please save me, open the door." She cried and knocked desperately, praying for salvation. Well, finally the door opened. A 6-foot man stood ramrod in front of her. His iron jaw and ice-blue eyes testified of his heartless nature. He was the Nazi commander of the area. He looked right at her and muttered one word, "Jewess." Well, Rachel's knees went wobbly, and her entire body shuddered. She had to lean on the wall so she wouldn't fall. The Nazi looked straight in her eyes and smirked. "You seek refuge, huh, stupid Jewess? This is the joke of the year. You've come all the way to make my job of exterminating Jews easier. Here, you're on a platter, served right to my table." Well, Rachel's mind went blank. She was looking at the angel of death incarnate. Her lips trembled, and she couldn't say a word. Well, the Nazi stopped his sadistic smirking and became serious. "Wait a minute. How did you get to my front door anyway? Did you encounter the dogs on the path leading up here?" Dogs? What dogs are you talking about?" Rachel started. She then looked behind her, and she saw more than a dozen man-eating Rottweilers and Dobermans roaming around the front yard. If she had seen them before, she would have never dared approach the farmhouse. Well, the Nazi thought for a moment. The fact that this teenage girl made it to the front door unscathed, this was uncanny, literally above nature. The Nazi commander's dogs were well enough trained to tear any intruder into shreds. Either this girl was a sorceress, or she had supernatural powers. Then the Nazi's brain flashed with a wonderfully cruel and magnificent idea. He said to Rachel, "You shall sleep safely here tonight, but tomorrow morning you're going to walk along that same path that led you up to here. If the dogs don't harm you, I give you my word of honor, I'll protect you until the war's over. And if they do devour you, it'll spare me the bother of feeding them breakfast." Well, that night was a long night of tears, trepidation, and tshuva for Rachel. For all she knew, her flesh and blood were soon to be prey to a pack of vicious dogs. There was nothing else she could do except repeat over and over, "Hashem, biyadcha afkiduchi. Hashem, I place my spirit in your hands." Well, at daybreak, Rachel's eyes were puffy and bloodshot from a sleepless night of pouring her heart out to Hashem. She was now emotionally prepared for whatever Hashem decided. She was escorted to the front door, about to begin her private death march. The Nazi and his henchmen were glued to the windows as the young Jewess walked, step by deliberated step, up the path from the farmhouse to the field. With all her might, she focused on the 4 holy letters of Hashem's name. The dogs gazed at her, but they didn't bark and they didn't move a muscle. Step after miraculous step, Rachel's soul hears the words of Psalm 23, "Though I walk in the valley of death, I shall not fear, for you are with me." She looked straight ahead and continued walking. All she saw and all she thought about was Hashem, the divine presence. Well, before she knew it, she reached the gate. Quickly she closed it behind her, and all her emotions poured out in a stream of tears and heart-wrenching sobs. The Nazi, within a minute, he came out to her and escorted her back into the house, and he kept his promise and gave her refuge until the end of the war. What do we learn from all this? Even if a person is surrounded by a room full of people with a highly contagious disease, no virus, bacteria, or any other pathogen could do any harm without the Almighty's decree. Even if a person is alone among a battalion of armed terrorists, if his or her emunah is solid, they won't be afraid. That's exactly what King David says in Psalm 27, verse 3. "Though an entire enemy encampment shall encamp against me, my heart shall not fear." And that means all our challenges, difficulties, and tribulations, together with diaspora, exile, terror, violent anti-Semitism, pandemics, they're all for one purpose, that we strengthen ourselves in emunah and cling even more to Hashem. May we succeed. Amen.